Most people do not have a spending problem. They have an open system. That is the brutal truth. Your paycheck lands. And before your intelligence ever gets a vote, 10 different hands are already inside it. An app reaches in, a subscription reaches in, a craving reaches in, a sale banner reaches in, a bad day reaches in, a little bit of boredom. Then you tell yourself the story. Most people tell themselves, I need more discipline, I need more motivation, I need to try harder next month. No, what you need is a firewall. I have spent my life studying capital, and one lesson keeps coming back in different clothing. Money does not stay with the person who wants it most. It stays with the person who builds the best system around it. That is true in insurance. It is true in railroads. It is true in operating companies. And it is true in your kitchen, on your phone, and inside your checking account. If your financial life is wide open, every impulse has root access. That is why so many intelligent people still fail to save $10,000. They think the battle is moral. It is not. It is architectural. They think they are weak. Usually they are exposed. They think they need one heroic month. What they need is a protected environment. You are trying to build wealth on an unguarded network. And an unguarded network always gets looted. I want you to think about how most people live. Their money arrives in one large stream and then drips out through dozens of little leaks. Some leaks are obvious: rent, food, utilities, transportation, fine, life costs money. But that is not where the real damage begins. The real damage begins where capital meets convenience. One tap, one click, one saved card, one trial membership, one little treat after a tiring day, one late night scroll, one small reward because work was stressful, one, I deserve this, one, it is only $20, one, I will make it back next paycheck. That is how the system meets you, not with one giant bite, with thousands of tiny permissions. If you let the modern marketplace talk directly to your weakest moment, you are not managing money, you are defending a border with no guards, and then you blame yourself for being invaded. I do not. I blame the design. The first thing I would do if I wanted to save money faster is not create a pretty budget. I would harden the perimeter. I would install what I call a friction gate. Most people live with the opposite. They live with zero friction spending. Their cards are already stored. Their apps remember everything. Their merchants know their address, their phone number, their preferred delivery method, and the exact emotional tone that makes them say yes. The whole structure is designed to remove pause, and pause is the one thing your future self desperately needs. You think you are losing to temptation. Often you are only losing to speed. A bad decision made slowly has a chance to die. A bad decision made in seconds becomes a charge on your statement. So I would start where rational adults almost never start. I would make spending harder, not impossible harder. That difference matters. When people hear make it harder, they imagine deprivation. I do not. I imagine authentication. Every serious system has authentication. A vault has it, a brokerage has it, a company has approval layers for capital allocation. But somehow your personal life, the place where every dollar matters most, has none. That is foolish. If you are overspending online, remove saved payment information. Log out of the merchants you visit when you are tired. Delete the shopping apps you use as entertainment. Take the fast card out of the wallet and put distance between you and instant access. If you are really dangerous with one category, build more friction. Use a separate card, lower the limit, put the card away, make yourself wait, make yourself move, make yourself think. I am not against comfort, I am against uninspected access. Then I would add what I call an external lock. This is where most people finally begin to understand the game. Internal friction is good. External consequence is better. Present, you has information that future. You will conveniently forget. Present, you knows you spend when you are lonely, tired, proud, anxious, or bored. Present, you knows the hour. Present, you knows the websites. Present, you knows the exact pattern. So present, you must stop negotiating and start trapping. That is not weakness. That is strategy. A man crossing dangerous waters ties himself to the mast because he understands desire has a short memory and consequences do not. If you know you will rationalize the purchase later, set a price on the rationalization. Now tell a friend, add a consequence, build a penalty, put money at risk if you violate the rule. Not because money is magical, but because consequences clarify what motivation blurs. Most people keep asking how to become stronger. I ask a better question. Why are you still requiring strength for a decision you make every single week? You should not need heroic character to get through an ordinary Tuesday. That is where the firewall begins, not with inspiration, with denial of access. Now, once the perimeter is less stupid, I would attack the next hidden enemy, and it is one of the most expensive enemies in modern life. Decision fatigue. People love to imagine that good money behavior comes from good intentions. It rarely does. By the end of the day, most people have spent their best judgment on work, family, traffic messages, deadlines, obligations, and 100 tiny emotional negotiations. Then they come home and try to make one more noble decision with a drained brain. That is why the evening version of you is often poorer than the morning version of you. Not because because your mental battery did. A person can know exactly what to do and still fail repeatedly if the system demands fresh willpower every time money moves. That is why automation is not convenience, it is defense. When I talk about building wealth, I always come back to one principle. What matters is not your opinion in a perfect moment. What matters is where the money goes when you are distracted. That is the real vote. If your savings, your investing, and your bill payments all depend on memory, mood, or discipline, then your money is not under management. It is under negotiation. And a life that keeps negotiating with itself gets expensive very quickly. So I would build what I call a command center. Paycheck comes in, decisions have already been made. The money is routed before emotion ever touches it. A portion leaves for long-term ownership. A portion leaves for the cash buffer that keeps panic from turning into debt. A portion sits ready for known bills. Then and only then do you get the part that is actually available to spend. Do you understand how different that is from the way most people live? Most people wait, spend, guess, regret, and then save what is left. That is not a system. That is scavenging. You should be doing the reverse route first, protect first, build first. Then let your lifestyle live on what remains. If you do that, you stop experiencing savings as sacrifice. You experience it as infrastructure. That is what wealthy people learn early, even if they use different language. They do not trust intent when structure can do the job better. The money that is automated is the money that is defended. The money that depends on your mood is the money that gets recruited by impulse. And if you are serious about saving $10,000, the single fastest shift is often not earning more immediately. It is ending the daily civil war between what you want long-term and what is easy right now. Automation ends that war before it starts. But even with friction and automation, there is another breach point that ruins people, especially people who think of themselves as pretty good with money. It is anticipation. This is where modern spending becomes psychological. Most people think they buy because the object will make them happier. That is only partly true. The bigger rush often comes before the purchase. The fantasy, the preview, the imagined improved self, the life you think this purchase will unlock. New coat, better desk, better kitchen device, better laptop, better shoes, better trip, better you. The market is very good at selling the chemical preview. It sells possibility first and utility second. That is why people can want something intensely on Monday and barely care by next week. The thing itself was never the real event. The anticipation was. So if you want to save faster, you must stop letting anticipation cash out instantly. I call this the quarantine window. When you want something, do not argue with yourself in the moment. That is amateur behavior. Do not stand in the store or on the website and try to become Socrates. You will lose. The craving is hot, the merchant is ready, the card is stored, and your brain has already started spending the money emotionally. Instead, route the urge into quarantine. Write it down, put it on a not now list, give it time. Force the purchase to survive distance. Distance is a truth serum. A great many things that look urgent on day 1 look ridiculous on day 12. Some do not survive 48 hours. Some die the moment your nervous system cools down. Some reveal themselves as boredom in expensive clothing. Some reveal themselves as insecurity. Some reveal themselves as envy. Some reveal themselves as a fantasy that had no business touching your bank account. That is the beauty of the quarantine window. It does not require you to become anti-pleasure. It only requires you to stop granting immediate clearance. And the surprising thing is this: your brain often gets enough of the reward simply from acknowledging the desire. You capture the item, name it, and postpone the crossing. The urge loses altitude, you get your dignity back. Then, if the item still matters after real time has passed, you can buy it with open eyes instead of a heated nervous system. That is a very different kind of purchase. One is possession, the other is impulse wearing a nice jacket. Now let me make this even harsher, because most people need harsher. A lot of what you call needs are not needs at all. They are category errors. You are mixing replacement with expansion. You are mixing use with fantasy. You are mixing function with identity. That confusion is expensive. If I wanted to save aggressively, I would live by what I call the replacement gate. New enters only when old exits, and preferably only when old has actually failed the job. This sounds small. It is not small. It rewires the whole meaning of buying. A person without a replacement gate does not just spend money. They build inventory, extra coat, extra gadget, extra appliance, extra bag, extra set of containers, extra tools, extra subscriptions, extra backup items for scenarios that almost never arrive. Their home fills up, their attention fills up, their maintenance burden fills up, and then they wonder why they feel tight even on a decent income, because ownership has drag. Every object is not only a purchase, it is storage, it is cleaning, it is attention, it is decision weight, it is hidden replacement cost later. It is one more thing claiming a little square of your life. That is why secondhand can be so powerful for the right buyer. It breaks the identity spell. You stop asking, what version of me does this signal? And start asking, what function does this solve? That is a healthier question. It is also a wealthier one. If something truly needs replacing, replace it intelligently. Look for value, durability, and utility. If something does not need replacing, stop decorating the urge with adult language. A great many purchases are not solutions. They are just mood management. And mood management paid with capital is one of the fastest ways to remain financially soft. Now, once you stop the bleeding at the perimeter, once you automate the route, once you quarantine the urge, once you protect the replacement gate, you face the next uncomfortable truth. A lot of people cannot save because they do not actually know their 4 numbers. They know their salary. Maybe they know their rent, they know they feel behind, but they do not know the shape of the system. That ignorance is dangerous. I want you to imagine flying a plane with no dashboard. You feel motion, you hear noise, you see clouds. But you do not know altitude, fuel, direction, or engine temperature. That is how many adults run money. They live inside activity with no instrumentation. Then they are shocked when they do not reach the destination. I would build what I call a money map, not because spreadsheets are exciting. They are not. But because anything you refuse to map will eventually control you. Your first number is capital, not the fantasy number, not the gross number, the number that actually lands. The amount available after taxes and real deductions, that is the money your life must obey. Your second number is core needs: shelter, utilities, food, transport, insurance, whatever keeps the organism running. Your third number is choice. This is where comfort, entertainment, convenience, upgrades, little luxuries, mood purchase, and social spending live. This bucket tells the truth about what your lifestyle is actually demanding. Your fourth number is the compound lane. This is the money going toward future ownership, future buffer, future freedom. This is the number that determines whether you are building a life or merely renting 1 month at a time. Do you see the power of that map once you can see these 4 numbers clearly? The lies get weaker. You can no longer pretend that nothing is wrong while your choice bucket is strangling your compound lane. You can no longer claim you cannot save anything when the truth is that your comfort spending has disguised itself as necessity. You can no longer say you are trying when your map proves your future is getting the leftovers. A lot of people hate this moment because clarity feels accusatory. Good. It should. The purpose of a map is not to flatter you, it is to expose terrain. And once the terrain is exposed, you can finally allocate with intelligence instead of emotion. Maybe your core needs are too high because you bought too much housing for your current stage. Maybe your choice bucket is bloated by takeout subscriptions, rides, and convenience fees. Maybe your compound lane is insultingly narrow. Maybe the problem is not income first. Maybe the problem is your default pattern. A money map turns "I feel behind" into "Here is exactly where the system is failing." That is when adulthood begins. Now let me show you one of the most embarrassing and profitable truths in personal finance. A shocking amount of money disappears, not because you consciously chose to spend it, but because you forgot to notice that someone was still taking it. This is why I insist on periodic audits. Capital attracts parasites, unused subscriptions, renewals you forgot, promo prices that quietly expired, bank fees, service fees, paper statement fees, random charges, old memberships, app subscriptions, duplicate tools, streaming packages, data plans you do not need, insurance riders you no longer use. These are not dramatic mistakes. They are ghost charges. And ghost charges are dangerous because they do not trigger enough pain to force action. They just hover in the background, feeding on your inattention. Month after month, quarter after quarter, quiet enough to survive, small enough to rationalize, persistent enough to matter. You would be amazed how many people insist they cannot find extra money, while $30, $50, $100, or $200 a month are leaking through forgotten permissions. That is not a budgeting problem. That is a maintenance problem. Every serious operator understands maintenance. If you own a business, you reconcile accounts. If you own property, you inspect it. If you run a portfolio, you review the holdings. But many people treat their personal finances like an attic. They toss things in and hope the dust never becomes expensive. Hope is not an audit. I would review the statements every quarter and hunt the repeats. What still serves? What expired? What quietly got more expensive? What is pure dead weight? What can be negotiated? What can be canceled? What fee can be challenged? What charge can be refunded? What service can be replaced with something leaner? This is not glamorous work. It is grown-up work, and grown-up work is what creates grown-up capital. You do this for the same reason you pull weeds from a garden, because weeds do not announce themselves as a crisis. They just take what should have fed the plants you care about. Your compound lane deserves the money your neglect is currently donating to the weeds. Now here is where most people collapse again. They hear all of this, feel fired up for 3 days, maybe 6, maybe 11, and then the old pattern returns. Why? Because the new behavior remains separate from daily life. It never fused with routine. So the final layer of the firewall is what I call the habit hook. Your brain already runs on tracks. It already has loops. Coffee, brushing teeth, feeding the dog, starting the car, sitting down at the desk, closing the laptop, getting into bed, scrolling at night, morning kitchen routine, commute, lunch break. You do these things with very little friction because the track already exists. That is where your money habit belongs, not floating out by itself as some noble, isolated ritual attached, hooked, piggybacking on a behavior that is already alive. If you make coffee every morning, that can become the moment you review yesterday's spending for 30 seconds. If you brush your teeth at night, that can become the moment you check tomorrow's automatic transfers. If Friday lunch is a stable ritual, that can become the moment you review the week's choice spending. If payday arrives, that can become the trigger to raise the transfer to savings by one more notch. This matters because routines beat intentions. You do not need another emotional speech from yourself. You need a groove so ordinary that the behavior becomes difficult to skip. That is how the firewall becomes invisible, and invisible is exactly what you want. The strongest systems do not depend on daily excitement. They sit in the background and keep doing their job. That is how wealth is built in the real world. Not through one giant moment of purity, through repeated small protections that gradually change the default flow of money. Now I want to step back and tell you what is really happening under all these tactics, because if you miss the deeper mechanism, you will turn this into another short-lived challenge and lose the plot. Saving $10,000 is not really about $10,000. It is about sovereignty. That is the word people avoid because it sounds too large for ordinary finance, but it is the right word. You are trying to stop your money from being governed by appetite, fatigue, marketing, convenience, and forgetfulness. You are trying to take back jurisdiction when your system has no firewall, your capital lives under occupation, your cravings vote, your subscriptions vote, your bad days vote, your social comparison votes, your laziness votes. Your future gets whatever those forces decide not to consume. That is not freedom. That is surrender with a debit card. And here is the cruel part. The longer you live that way, the more you start to think the problem is your income alone. Sometimes income is part of it. Yes. But a great many people would be shocked by what happens when they protect the first few thousand properly. The feeling changes, the panic softens, the self-respect returns. The emergency becomes smaller, the mental noise drops, and once your system stops leaking, every new dollar finally has somewhere intelligent to go. That is when savings speed up, not because you became a different species, because you stopped asking raw human willpower to do a machine's job. I want you to understand something else. There is a reason this feels so emotional. An open financial system does not only cost you money, it damages your psychology. It teaches you that progress disappears. It teaches you that restraint does not work. It teaches you that every attempt at discipline ends in relapse. It teaches you that you are just bad with money. That story becomes identity, and identity becomes behavior. So when I say build a firewall, I am not just telling you to save faster. I am telling you to break the loop that keeps proving to you that your future cannot be trusted. Because once you do start seeing a protected balance grow, something very important happens. You stop feeling hunted. You stop feeling that each month begins at zero. You stop treating every little setback as proof that you will never get ahead. The money starts doing something that small savings are supposed to do from the beginning. It starts changing your posture. That is why I do not laugh at $10,000. $10,000 properly defended is not just a number. It is the early shape of refusal power. It is the first layer of insulation between you and stupidity, including your own. It is the amount that begins to tell your nervous system that every inconvenience is not a catastrophe. It is the amount that turns a broken appliance, a surprise bill, a slow month, a medical copay, a flight home, a repair, or a temporary setback from a crisis into an event. That is a very big difference. But you do not get there by staring at the target and wishing harder. You get there by controlling the gates. Friction gate, command center, quarantine window, replacement gate, money map, quarterly audit, habit hook. Notice what all of them have in common. They do not ask you to become perfect. They ask you to become protected. That is a much smarter standard. Perfection is fragile. Protection is scalable. A person who needs perfect motivation to save will fail the moment life gets noisy. A person with a firewall can have a bad week and still win because the system continues to block, route, delay, expose, clean, and reinforce. That is how serious adults survive their own inconsistency. Now I will make this personal because it should feel personal. The next paycheck you receive is going to tell the truth, not your plans, not your intentions, not the content you watched, not the notes you took, the actual paycheck. When it lands, one of two things will happen. Either it will hit an open field where every old habit can attack it again, or it will hit a defended system that already knows what to do. That is the test. You are much closer to your real future in that moment than in all the motivational language you consume before it. If the money lands in chaos, then chaos is your real plan. If the money lands inside a firewall, then protection is your real plan. And I want you to see the choice as clearly as possible, because it is a door. And there is no third option hiding behind a clever excuse. You can keep living with an open system and keep calling the result. Bad luck, bad timing, low discipline, expensive times, weak habits, a rough month, a stressful season, an off week, or a temporary slip. Or you can admit the harder truth. Your money has been crossing an undefended border, and you are the one who kept leaving the gate open. Close it, not someday. Before the next deposit, before the next sale, before the next tired evening, before the next subscription renews, before the next small reward walks out with another piece of your future. $10,000 is not waiting for a better version of you. It is waiting for a safer system. Build the firewall, and your savings will stop behaving like a wish. They will start behaving like a decision.